It's strange how a single night can burn your entire life to the ground. I remember standing in the middle of my driveway, rain pouring so hard it blurred the lights of my house, the same house I built with my bare hands 30 years ago. And there she was, Linda, my ex-wife, screaming that I was nothing without her. I didn't even argue. I just watched as she closed the door, leaving me on the porch with nothing but a duffel bag and a heart that felt like it was collapsing inside my chest. I was 65, tired, and broken. Retirement had come and gone, savings drained after the divorce, and now I had no home, no pride, not even a damn pillow to rest my head on. For the first time in my life, I had nowhere to go. I ended up sleeping in my truck that night, parked under a flickering streetlight in a Walmart parking lot, the sound of rain hitting the roof mixed with the memories running wild in my head. The house, the laughter, the dinners we used to share, and then the betrayal that destroyed everything. Linda had taken everything in the divorce. The house, half my pension, even the golden retriever I raised since he was a pup, all because she found herself a new man, some slick real estate guy named Brad who promised her a better life. But the funny part? I didn't hate Brad. I hated myself for loving someone who'd already planned my downfall months before she said the word divorce. Days turned into weeks. I sold whatever I had left, old tools, my watch, even my wedding ring. I used the money to eat cheap diner meals and keep gas in my truck. I'd park by the ocean sometimes, staring at the waves crashing like they were angry for me. One night, as I sat on a bench outside a small diner in Oregon, I realized how invisible I'd become. People walked by without even noticing. I wasn't Michael Thompson, the man who built homes for a living. I was just another old man the world had forgotten. That's when he sat down beside me. An old man, probably older than me, wearing a wrinkled coat and a hat that looked like it had seen better days. He didn't say hello or ask for money. He just looked at me with eyes that seemed to know everything. We sat in silence for a while, watching the empty street. Then, out of nowhere, he spoke. His voice was calm, steady, almost like he'd been waiting to say those words his entire life. "Son," he said, "you're not done yet." I turned to look at him, confused. "Excuse me?" He smiled faintly. "You heard me. You're not done yet. Life only ends when you stop fighting for what's rightfully yours." Those were the 5 words I'll never forget. You're not done yet. For some reason, they hit me harder than anything I'd ever heard. He got up slowly, gave me a small folded piece of paper, and walked away before I could even ask his name. I opened it. It was an address, a place about 2 hours away. No explanation, nothing else written. I almost threw it away. I thought maybe he was just another crazy old man wandering around. But something in my gut told me this was different. The next morning, I drove to that address. It was an old warehouse on the edge of town. I expected nothing but dust and regret. But when I stepped inside, what I found changed everything. There was a man waiting for me, a lawyer dressed sharp, holding a file. He looked up from his desk and said, "Are you Michael Thompson?" I nodded slowly. He smiled and said words that made my knees almost give out. "Sir, you've just inherited $47 million. I stared at him like he was speaking another language. "I think you've got the wrong guy," I muttered. But he didn't. Apparently, an old construction client of mine, someone I'd helped decades ago without charging a dime, had passed away and left me his entire estate. I hadn't even known he'd remembered my name. That night, as I sat in a cheap motel room holding the inheritance papers, something inside me shifted. I wasn't broken anymore. I wasn't homeless, helpless, or invisible. I was Michael Thompson again, and this time I had a new mission. Revenge wasn't about anger anymore. It was about justice. It was about showing Linda, and everyone who turned their back on me, that I wasn't the man they left behind in the rain. I was coming back. And when I did, no one would ever forget the name Michael Thompson. That night, I barely slept. I kept staring at those papers, my hands trembling every time I looked at the number, $47 million. I whispered it under my breath like it might disappear if I said it too loud. It didn't feel real. For weeks, I'd been begging for coins, eating cold fries out of trash bins, and now I could buy the damn diner that threw me out last week. The next morning, I walked into the lawyer's office again. I was afraid it was all some big mistake, that he'd say, "Sorry, wrong Michael Thompson." But he didn't. He smiled, shook my hand, and told me everything was verified. The money was mine. Every cent of it. I asked him who the man was and the one who left me the fortune. The lawyer flipped through some papers and said, "His name was Henry Porter." Does that ring a bell? My breath caught. Henry Porter, the old war veteran whose house I'd built for free 30 years ago after his insurance refused to pay. He was a kind man, alone with nobody to help him. I remember refusing payment, saying, "Just promise me you'll live long enough to enjoy that front porch." He'd laughed and said, "You're a good man, Mike, I won't forget that," and he didn't. When the lawyer told me he'd died with no family, I felt something twist inside me, gratitude, sadness, and a spark, the kind that had been dead inside me since the divorce. I wasn't going to waste this chance. I spent the next few weeks quietly building a new life. Bought a small house by the coast. Nothing too fancy, just peace and quiet. Got myself cleaned up. New clothes. A proper haircut. I started walking straighter, breathing deeper. But the more I rebuilt, the more I thought about Linda, my ex-wife, the woman who'd torn me apart. She and Brad were still living in my house. The one I'd built, the one I'd bled for. The one she said I'd never step foot in again. I wondered if she still smiled when she walked past the photos of us she hadn't thrown away yet. I wondered if she ever regretted what she did, and then I decided I'd make sure she did, not with rage, not with violence, but with something much sharper and power. I started small. I hired a private investigator named Grant. Rough-looking guy, mid-40s, the kind of man who could find out what brand of toothpaste your neighbor uses. I told him to find everything he could about Linda and Brad, their finances, debts, habits, weaknesses. 2 weeks later, he came back with a folder so thick it looked like a Bible. "Your ex-wife," he said, sliding the file across my table, "is living a lie." I opened it slowly. Turns out, Brad's real estate empire was collapsing. He was drowning in debt. They'd mortgaged the house twice. They were living off credit cards and pretending everything was fine. I smiled for the first time in a long time. Revenge, I realized, didn't always require anger. Sometimes it just required patience. I spent days thinking about what to do. I didn't want to destroy them completely, and not yet. I wanted them to feel the weight of everything they'd done to me. So I bought the debt. Every mortgage, every outstanding loan, every overdue tax, all under an alias. I used my new company, Henderson Group Investments, to quietly purchase every piece of their financial misery. They had no idea that the man who owned their future was the same one they'd left for dead. It took 6 months. 6 long, beautiful months of quiet preparation. I watched from the shadows as their smiles faded, as the cracks in their perfect little life began to show. Brad started drinking. Linda stopped posting those fake happy couple photos on Facebook. They were sinking, and they didn't even know who was pulling them down. But I wasn't finished. One night, I drove past the old house. My house. The windows were dark, the paint peeling off the porch I'd built myself. I sat there for a long time. Memories flooding back, Christmas mornings, anniversaries, laughter that used to echo through those walls. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I remembered the night she threw me out. The way her voice cracked with anger when she said, "You're nothing without me," I whispered to the empty house. "You're about to find out who's nothing." A week later, the final payment went through. I owned their debt, their home, and their future. I could have taken everything right then. But revenge tastes better when it's served cold, and mine was just getting started. I told Grant to set up a meeting. I wanted to look Linda in the eyes again. Not as the man she destroyed, but as the man she'd regret underestimating. When the day came, I wore a dark suit, expensive, but understated. I walked into the cafe where she used to meet her friends. She was there, sitting by the window, stirring her coffee, wearing that same smug expression she always had when she thought she'd won. She looked up and froze. "Michael?" she whispered. I smiled. "Hello, Linda. Long time." She blinked like she was seeing a ghost. You look different." "Yeah," I said softly. "Life's funny like that. Sometimes it gives back what it takes away, and sometimes it gives you the tools to rebuild. Or to destroy." Her hand trembled slightly. "What do you want?" I leaned in, my voice calm but sharp. "I just wanted to see your face. Before everything changes," she frowned. "What are you talking about?" I stood up, adjusted my coat, and smiled. "You'll find out soon enough." And I walked away. leaving her in silence, confusion, and fear. Because for the first time in years, I was in control, and this time, I wasn't going to lose. 3 weeks after that cafe meeting, I got the first phone call. "Mr. Henderson," Grant said, using my alias, "the foreclosure notices have been issued. They have 30 days to respond before the property's repossessed." I didn't say a word for a few seconds, just stared out the window of my office overlooking the ocean, feeling the same calm I used to feel before a storm. "Good," I finally said. "Let it happen naturally, no rush. I want them to believe it's fate." That night I poured myself a glass of whiskey. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel bitterness. I felt purpose. Revenge wasn't about yelling or fighting anymore. It was about control. About knowing exactly when to twist the knife. Linda had no idea that the mysterious Henderson group buying up their debts was me. She probably thought it was just another bank. Brad tried to call a lawyer, but their credit was ruined. Their assets leveraged beyond saving. It was only a matter of time. 2 weeks later, Linda showed up at my new company's front desk. She looked thinner, paler. The sparkle in her eyes was gone. "I need to speak to whoever owns Henderson Group," she said, her voice shaking slightly. The receptionist, one of my best hires, smiled politely. "Do you have an appointment, ma'am?" "No," she said. "Please. My husband and I, we're about to lose everything. I just need to speak to someone, anyone who can help us." I was watching from my office camera feed the entire time. I could have gone down there. I could have ended it then and there. But I didn't. Not yet. Grant came in, dropped a folder on my desk, and said, "Brad's been moving what's left of their money into a personal account. He's planning to skip town." I let out a dry laugh. Typical. When things get tough, cowards run. I gave Grant a simple instruction. Let him run. Let her be the one left behind. She needs to know what abandonment feels like. And that's exactly what happened. 3 days later, Brad was gone. He cleaned out the last of their savings and vanished without a trace. Linda was left alone, drowning in foreclosure notices, overdue bills, and fear. Karma, I thought, has a perfect sense of timing. But the funny thing about revenge? It changes you. It doesn't just consume your enemies, it starts to reshape you. I'd sit in my house at night, surrounded by silence, and think about her. About the way she laughed before she became cruel. About how love turned into poison. Part of me wanted to forgive, to just move on. But then I'd remember her voice, "You're nothing without me," and the fire inside me would roar back to life. A month passed. Linda finally lost the house. Everything was auctioned off piece by piece. Her car, her jewelry, even that painting she loved, the one I'd bought her for our 10th anniversary. She tried to contact me once. A short email, "Michael, I know we've had our differences, but please, I need help. Just a loan until I can get back on my feet." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I typed a single line and hit send. "You're not done yet." The same 5 words the old man told me that night in the diner. I don't know why I sent them. Maybe because deep down I wanted her to fight, to feel what I felt when I was left with nothing. But that night something unexpected happened. Around 10 p.m. I heard a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole and there she was, Linda, standing in the rain, shivering, her makeup running down her face. For a moment I froze. The sight of her took me back to that night she threw me out, except this time the roles were reversed. I opened the door slowly. "You shouldn't be here," I said coldly. "I had nowhere else to go," she whispered. "Brad's gone. He left me with nothing. I don't even have a bed to sleep on." She started crying, real tears this time. Not manipulation, just raw human pain. I wanted to feel satisfaction, triumph. But what I felt instead was pity. "Michael, please," she said, her voice trembling. "I made mistakes. I was stupid, I was selfish. But you know me better than anyone, please. Just help me." I looked at her for a long time. Every memory we'd shared flashed through my mind. The love, the betrayal, the nights she held me close, and the nights she tore me apart. I finally stepped aside. "Come in." She walked inside quietly, dripping water on the floor. I handed her a towel, poured her a cup of coffee, and sat across from her. "You know," I said slowly, "I used to dream about this moment. You begging me for help. Me telling you no. Watching you feel the same pain I did." She lowered her eyes. You deserve that satisfaction. But, I continued, the truth is, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't fix anything. Revenge doesn't heal, Linda. It just replaces one kind of hurt with another. She looked up, tears glistening in her eyes. So it's what now? I leaned back, staring at her. Now, I decide what kind of man I want to be. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. Maybe forgiveness wasn't weakness. Maybe it was the final stage of power, but I wasn't ready to forgive, not yet. Stay the night, I said quietly. We'll talk in the morning. She nodded, exhausted. I gave her a blanket, watched her fall asleep on the couch, and then stood by the window, staring out at the rain. The night I lost everything, an old man told me, "You're not done yet." I finally understood what he meant. I wasn't done destroying her, and I wasn't done saving myself either. I woke up early the next morning, the smell of rain still lingering in the air. The house was quiet except for the soft sound of waves crashing in the distance. Linda was still asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. For a moment, I just stood there watching her. Her face looked older, tired, broken. It reminded me of the woman I once fell in love with before everything went dark. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I made a pot of coffee and sat down at the kitchen table, staring out the window. My mind was a storm. For months, revenge had been my fuel. Every dollar I earned, every plan I built, it was all leading to this. Seeing her lose everything, watching her crumble, had been my closure. But now that she was right here, sleeping under my roof again, I didn't feel the victory I expected. I felt something heavier. I was starting to wonder if revenge had turned me into the very thing I hated. When she finally woke up, she looked disoriented. Her hair was messy, eyes swollen from crying. She spotted the coffee and whispered, "You still drink it black?" I didn't answer. She sat down across from me, wrapping her hands around the mug like she was trying to hold on to something warm in her cold. "Collapsing world, Michael," she said softly. "I don't even know where to start." "Start with the truth," I said, my voice flat. "Why did you do it? Why destroy everything we built?" She hesitated, her lips trembling. "I thought I wanted more. Brad promised me security, a life of comfort. I thought I was tired of struggling." I leaned forward, eyes sharp. "We weren't struggling, Linda, we were living. Maybe it wasn't glamorous, but it was real." She nodded, tears falling silently, and I threw it away. For someone who saw me as a trophy, not a partner. Silence filled the room. It wasn't angry silence. It was the kind that forces you to face what's left after everything burns. Then she said something I didn't expect. "You can hate me all you want, Michael. I deserve it, but please don't let it consume you. I've seen what hate does. It eats people alive." I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time I saw what the old man might have meant. "You're not done yet" wasn't about revenge. It was about redemption. About proving to myself that I could rise without sinking to their level. Still, part of me wasn't ready to let go. "I bought the house," I said quietly. "The one you and Brad lived in. It's mine now." She blinked, confused.
"What do you mean?"
"I mean," I continued, "you've been paying rent to me for the last 6 months. Every payment, every loan, every piece of debt, you were paying it to me." Her face turned pale. You did this?" I didn't smile. "I told you once that I'd make you feel what I felt." I wasn't lying. She covered her mouth, shaking. "Oh my God. Now you know what it's like," I said softly. "To lose everything. To feel powerless." She broke down, crying harder than I'd ever seen. It should have felt satisfying, but it didn't. It just hurt. After a long pause, I added, "I'm not going to throw you out. I just wanted you to understand." She looked up, her face red and wet with tears. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because," I said, "I needed to see if there was anything human left in you." There was a long silence before she spoke again. "I'm sorry, Michael. I really am. I ruined us and I don't deserve your forgiveness. But thank you for not destroying me completely." She stood up, took her bag, and headed for the door. "I'll find somewhere to go. I won't bother you again." I didn't stop her. I just watched her walk out into the gray morning. When the door closed, the house felt emptier than it ever had before. I sat back down, staring at the untouched cup of coffee across from mine. For the first time, I felt no anger, no joy, just quiet. Maybe that's what closure really was. Not a grand moment of revenge or a final blow, but the silence after you've done everything you thought you needed to do. The following days blurred together. I went for long walks along the beach, watched the sun set behind the water, and thought about the old man who gave me that folded piece of paper months ago. I never saw him again, but his words lived in my head like a heartbeat. "You're not done yet," he was right. I wasn't done, just not in the way I thought. One afternoon, Grant dropped by. "You're quiet lately," he said, leaning against the doorway. "Everything okay?" I nodded. "Yeah. For the first time, I think it might be." He smiled faintly. "You know, I've seen a lot of people try to get revenge, Mike. It never ends well. But you're different. You didn't destroy her. You made her face herself." "I didn't do it for her," I said quietly. "I did it for me. I needed to know I could look in the mirror again without seeing a victim." That night, I poured myself one last drink and sat on the porch. The wind was cool, the sea calm. For the first time in a long while, I felt peace. Not because I won, but because I didn't lose myself in the fight. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled, soft and fading. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Thank you, old man." The night I lost everything had given me something I never expected: clarity. But little did I know, the story wasn't over yet. Because sometimes the past has a way of finding you again, right when you think you're finally free. It had been 3 quiet months since Linda walked out of my house for the last time. No calls, no letters, no more ghosts from the past knocking on my door. For the first time in years, life was still. Too still. I spent most mornings by the beach, sipping coffee, watching gulls fight over scraps near the water. It became a strange kind of therapy, the sound of waves washing away whatever was left of the anger that once ruled me. One gray morning, as I was locking the front gate, a black envelope lay on my doorstep. No stamp, no address, just my name written in sharp, crooked handwriting. Michael. My first thought was Linda. Maybe she'd found some new way to ask for help. But when I opened it, my hands went cold. Inside was a single photograph. It was the old man, the same man who had handed me that folded note months ago, the one who'd told me, "You're not done yet." Only this time, he was lying in a hospital bed, pale, hooked up to machines, and on the back of the photo a message written in shaky ink. "If you want the truth, come to St. Clair's Hospice, room 214, before it's too late." I didn't even think twice. 2 hours later, I was in my truck driving down the coast. The hospice was quiet, the kind of place where the air feels heavy with memories. I walked through narrow hallways lined with faded paintings and soft beeping machines. When I reached room 214, I hesitated for a moment, then knocked. A weak voice said, "Come in." He looked smaller than I remembered. The sharpness in his eyes had dulled, but there was still that familiar spark, the one that saw straight through me months ago. "You came," he said with a faint smile. "Didn't think you would." I pulled up a chair beside him. "You sent the photo. What's this about?" He chuckled softly. "I didn't send it, my nurse did. I told her if I didn't make it through the night to find you. Guess I got lucky." I frowned. "Why me?" He took a long breath. "Because our stories aren't that different, Michael." He turned his head toward the window where rain tapped softly against the glass. "I had a wife once. Her name was Margaret. She was my whole damn world. Then one day I came home early from work and found her with someone else. A friend. My best friend." He paused, his eyes glassy. "I lost everything that day. My marriage, my business, my purpose. I wanted revenge too, just like you. I thought if I made him pay, I'd feel better. So I did. I destroyed him, took his company, his reputation, even his house. And for a moment I thought I'd won." He swallowed hard. "But I didn't. The hate didn't leave me. It just moved in, took over everything. Margaret died a few years later, and I realized too late that I'd spent the last years of my life chasing ghosts. I sat there silent, feeling every word hit like a hammer. "So you wanted to stop me from becoming you?" I said quietly. He nodded. Exactly. When I saw you that night, broken, angry, I saw myself all over again. I gave you that note because I wanted you to find your way out before it was too late. I looked down at my hands. You knew about Linda, about everything. How? He smiled faintly. Small town. People talk. Plus, I might have made a few calls. Let's just say I had some strings I could still pull. He coughed, struggling to breathe. The monitor beeped faster. I reached for the nurse's button, but he grabbed my wrist. His grip was surprisingly strong. Don't, he whispered. Let me finish. I froze, watching him fight for every breath. I'm leaving you something, he said, pointing weakly toward the nightstand. A letter. Read it when I'm gone. It's not about money or guilt, it's a chance. Before I could ask what he meant, the nurse rushed in, adjusting his oxygen mask. His eyes met mine one last time, and then he was gone. The room went quiet, except for the steady hum of the machines. The nurse gently placed a folded letter in my hand. The handwriting was the same, rough, slanted, full of history. Michael, if you're reading this, I'm finally free. There's an old cabin by the cliffs, just north of the bay. Inside, you'll find a box with my name on it. What's in there isn't payment, it's truth. Something I never told anyone. Go there, and maybe you'll finally understand why I said you're not done yet. I left the hospice in silence. The sky had darkened, and rain fell in slow, heavy drops. By the time I reached the cliffs, night had swallowed the coast. The cabin was small and worn, hidden behind overgrown weeds. Inside, the air smelled of dust and salt. On the wooden table sat a box, old, heavy, locked with a rusted latch. I broke it open with a piece of metal from the fireplace. Inside was a stack of documents, photos, and a smaller sealed envelope marked, "For Michael only." My stomach tightened as I unfolded the papers. They were legal documents, adoption records, dated decades ago. And then I saw it. My name, Michael Reynolds, adopted son. Below that, the old man's signature. My hands began to shake. He wasn't just a stranger who helped me find myself. He was my father. All these months he had known. He had been watching. Me guiding me, saving me from becoming the same broken man he once was. The last envelope contained a photo. Me as a little boy sitting on his shoulders at a fair. Behind us, a woman smiled at the camera. His wife. My mother. I dropped to my knees, the photo trembling in my hands. The wind outside howled through, the cracks in the walls, and for the first time in my life I cried. Not from anger, not from pain, but from understanding. The note echoed in my head, louder than ever. You're not done yet. He was right. I wasn't done, because now I had something new to live for. The truth. The storm outside hadn't stopped all night. Winds slammed against the cabins. Windows as I sat by the old table, the papers spread before me. Proof that everything I'd ever believed about my life was a lie. The old man, my father, he'd known about me all this time. He'd known who I was. I ran my hands through my hair, trying to breathe, but my chest felt heavy, like someone had dropped a stone inside it. Every memory suddenly had a new color. The way he looked at me that night by the fire, the strange familiarity in his voice when he said, "You're not done yet." He wasn't just some stranger passing through my misery. He was trying to finish what he never could as a father. I picked up the last page from the box, a faded letter addressed to Michael Reynolds. If you ever find this, I owe you the truth. You were taken from me, Michael. Not given away. Taken. I spent my life trying to get you back. But every door I opened led to another lie. The woman who raised you, she wasn't your mother by blood. And the woman who destroyed you, Linda, she's connected to the people who ruined our family long ago. I froze. The words blurred in front of me. Linda? Connected to my past? No, it couldn't be. I searched through the rest of the documents. There were newspaper clippings from the 1980s, articles about a business scandal involving my father's old company. The headline read, Reynolds engineering scandal. CEO betrayed by partner, company sold off overnight. I scanned the text, my eyes catching a familiar name. Jonathan Miles. Linda's father. It hit me like a gut punch. Linda had always told me her father was a retired real estate investor, but she'd never once mentioned his real past. The man who destroyed my father's company. The man who forced him into bankruptcy and exile. The betrayal ran deeper than I could have imagined. I sat there for hours, staring at the flickering flame in the fireplace. The puzzle was finally coming together, but it wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about legacy, about a cycle of betrayal that had been turning for decades. I picked up the phone the next morning and called an old friend, Mark Benson, a retired private investigator I used to know back when I worked in construction contracts. He owed me a few favors. Mike, damn, it's been years. What's going on? I need information, I said. On a woman named Linda Miles Reynolds and her father, Jonathan Miles, everything you can find. There was a pause. You sound serious. You in trouble? Not yet, I said quietly, but I might be getting there. By that evening, Mark called me back. Mike, you might want to sit down. I was already sitting. Jonathan Miles died 10 years ago, liver cancer. But before that, he was under investigation for multiple fraud cases. The company he sold, Reynolds Engineering, was your father's, wasn't it? Yeah, I said. Well, guess who helped him cover the trail? I clenched my jaw. Who? Your ex-wife, Linda. She's been running shell companies tied to his offshore accounts for years. Looks like she inherited more than his money, and she inherited his mess. I couldn't speak. It all made sense now. The way Linda had manipulated me. The timing of our divorce. How fast she'd moved the money. How she left just as everything went downhill. She'd been finishing her father's work. Destroying the last Reynolds standing. Mark's voice cut through my silence. Mike, I don't know what you're planning, but whatever it is, be careful. People like her. They don't play fair. I know, I said, staring out the window. That's why I won't either. The next week, I began planning quietly. I transferred what little money I had left into a new account under an alias. I reconnected with an old lawyer who once handled estate disputes. And then I made my move. I found out Linda had remarried to a man named Edward Kane, a wealthy developer in Los Angeles. They lived in a glass mansion overlooking the city. All luxury and lies. That's where I'd deliver my revenge, and not with violence, not with rage, but with truth. I spent days gathering the evidence from my father's box. The papers linking Jonathan Miles to the company theft. The proof that Linda had hidden assets under fake corporations. I built it all into a single file. It was the story of her entire bloodline. Greed, deceit, and destruction. And now, it was time to let the world see it. I parked my truck outside their mansion one night, dressed in a plain suit that still smelled faintly of sea salt and smoke. The gate buzzed when I pressed the intercom. A woman's voice came through. Who is it? Tell Linda, I said calmly, that Michael Reynolds is here. There was silence. Then, a sharp gasp. Minutes later, the gates opened. Linda stood in the doorway, her perfect face pale, her smile frozen. She hadn't aged much. Money has a way of keeping people looking young. Michael, she said softly, almost like a ghost. You're alive. Barely, I replied. She stepped aside. Come in. The house was spotless, expensive, sterile, soulless. The kind of place where even the air feels owned. We sat across from each other in her glass-walled living room. I heard you disappeared after the divorce, she said. I assumed. You assumed wrong. Her eyes narrowed. Why are you here? I placed the file on the table between us. For closure, I said. She stared at it, then looked at me. Her expression unreadable. What's this? Your family's legacy, I said. Everything your father stole. Everything you finished, she laughed, but it wasn't nervous laughter. It was cruel, practiced. You don't scare me, Michael. You're just a bitter old man clinging to ghosts. Maybe, I said quietly, standing up. But ghosts have a way of haunting back, and with that, I walked out, leaving the file on her table. She didn't know it yet, but that same file had already been emailed to every journalist, lawyer, and former business associate her family ever crossed. By morning, her empire would start to crumble, piece by piece, just like mine once did, but this time it wouldn't be out of hate. It would be justice. As I drove back toward the coast, the old man's words whispered in my head again. You're not done yet. He was right. I wasn't done. But for the first time, I wasn't driven by anger. I was driven by peace. The morning after I left Linda's mansion, I parked by the ocean, the same place where months ago, I'd sat in my truck wondering if my life was worth living. This time, the air felt different, lighter, like the world had finally stopped pressing down on my shoulders. I watched the sunrise break across the waves, the sky painted in gold and fire. My phone buzzed on the dashboard, messages pouring in. Breaking news. Real estate power couple under federal investigation. Linda Kane accused of financial fraud. Daughter of former industrial magnate Jonathan Miles. Linked to decades-old scandal. I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. I just exhaled, slow and steady, and let the silence fill me. Revenge hadn't brought joy. It had brought something quieter, something cleaner. Closure. By noon, I was back in my small beach house, sorting through what remained of my father's things. The box, the letters, the photo, all of it told a story that was finally complete. As I packed it away, I found one last folded note I hadn't noticed before. Tucked beneath the photo of him holding me as a child, it read, Michael, when you're done chasing ghosts, go back to where it all started. You'll know what to do. I stared at it for a while, then grabbed my keys. I drove back to the same diner where I'd first met him, the night I'd lost everything. The neon sign still flickered, same as before. The same booth by the window, the same smell of burnt coffee and rain. I slid into the booth, and the waitress and a young woman with kind eyes came over. Coffee? Yeah, I said with a small smile. Black, just like always. She poured me a cup and paused. You look like you've been through something, I chuckled. You could say that. As I sat there sipping my coffee, I noticed an old man sitting at the counter. He wasn't him, but something about the way he stared out the window, calm, distant, almost peaceful, reminded me of my father. And suddenly, I could almost hear his voice again. You're not done yet. That's when it hit me. The 5 words, the ones he'd said the night we met, the ones that had changed everything. At the time, I thought they meant revenge, but now I understood they weren't about destruction. They were about redemption. You're not done yet meant I still had life left to live. I still had time to make things right, not just for me, but for him. Over the next few weeks, I started fixing up his old cabin by the cliffs. Repaired the walls, replaced the broken windows, scrubbed away years of dust. Neighbors began stopping by to help. A few even brought meals, and slowly something beautiful started to happen. A community formed around me. I wasn't the lonely old man anymore. I was just Michael, the guy who'd lived through hell and found his way back. I donated part of the inheritance my father left behind to rebuild the local children's center. The rest I used to start a foundation in his name, the Reynolds Hope Fund, for people who'd lost everything and needed a second chance. For once, my life wasn't about what was taken from me. It was about what I could give back. One evening, I walked down to the beach again. The tide was low, the sky turning orange. I stood by the water thinking about all that had happened. Linda, my father, the long nights of anger, the years wasted chasing revenge. And in the wind, I heard it again, not as a memory but as a whisper. 5 simple words carried through the salt air. You're not done yet, son. I closed my eyes and let the tears fall, not from pain but from peace. For the first time in decades, I felt whole. I'd lost everything once, but somehow in losing it all, I'd found myself again. I turned toward the setting sun and smiled, because now, I finally understood. The real revenge wasn't destroying the people who broke me. It was becoming everything they said I'd never be, and that, I realized, was the sweetest revenge of all.